Okay, here's the compost bin. This is the second round, and I'll come back to that later. As you can see, the worms are nice and happy. They're not crawling all over the place trying to get out, although there are a few adventurous ones. But for the most part, they love the conditions in the mix, and so what I did was, first I'll show you my finished. It's almost finished. This is the worm. These are the worm castings, and there's very little to tell you that it had once been largely food. There is probably virtually no soil in here. It's all worm castings and composted material, and it's virtually odorless, actually, if you smell it. Now this particular batch had been cooking on my wood stove last evening for a few hours. So there are no more earthworms. There's no more red wigglers present in this soil as far as I can see. Whereas last evening it was chock full of them. And I went through the whole batch outdoors to remove all of the unconsumed potato peelings and so forth that seem to always linger whenever you're composting with worms. They kind of don't bother with that type of stuff because it's so hard. But in any case, I went through it by hand and removed all of the material that did not break down and was not consumed, and I tossed it back inside my second batch of worms for perhaps further composting and so forth. But anyway, by the way, the potato peelings had started to sprout. Many of them did have little eyes that were coming out. So that's a little side note there. But anyway, what I'm going to do is, being that this has already been screened very well, and what I did was, excuse me, what I did was I screened it with a quarter inch mesh screening frame. That's pretty easy to make. You can throw this together in a couple of hours or less if you have the materials. All you need is some what they call hardware cloth, and make sure it's galvanized so that you if you inevitably, and you probably always leave it outside and it will start to rust. I don't know if they sell quarter-inch screening like that's plastic coated. That would probably be better. But anyway, that screen there is probably over 20 years old. I inherited that from somebody. But anyway, the stuff that came out of that compost mix that's on the stove there is just this. It's the stuff that didn't go through the screen. And I didn't try to force it because this actually has a lot of worm eggs in it and other organisms, so I wanted that. And the material that I go by basically is Crockett's Victory Garden. This is my favorite gardening book. I've got a whole 2 or 3 rows in my library on just gardening and landscaping. But this chapter here, page 181, and I'm giving the credit to Jim Crockett and his family. Jim himself passed away some years ago, but evidently there's still a hold on some stuff, and so I'm giving him the credit for this information. This book is I'm on page 182, and it shows you how to compost your, or how to pasteurize your compost. And as you can see, I'm doing pretty much the same thing, only he uses a grate, a grill grate, over some charcoal briquettes, and that's how he explains how to do it. And the specifics are, I'll just go over it real quick. But it says it needs to be pasteurized before it can be brought indoors, in order to cleanse it from the assortment of bugs, weed seeds, and other undesirable elements that no indoor gardener wants introduced in houseplants. Makes sense. So what he does, he steams the stuff wet, and he's got a little thermometer in there. And what I do is I try to bury it in the center. Don't try to put it all the way to the bottom of the pot, otherwise you're going to get a false reading. Just set the material in the pan and heat it up for get it to about 200 degrees. I would go a little less. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cover on mine and put a flame retardant device that I'll show you later, and cook that stuff for 30 minutes. And it's basically what you're doing is steam baking it to kill all of the pathogens like fungi and virtually all weed seeds will not survive that for half an hour's time. They're just going to be steamed and cooked basically. So the weed seeds are taken care of, the fungi are, and what's left is nutritious, rich. As a matter of fact, many of the beneficial organisms like bacteria and so forth, the mycorrhizae, will be preserved. But my main reason for making worm castings is not for the beneficial organisms. I can do that with just plain compost outside. What I'm after is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, better known as NPK. These are the three essential nutrients that the plants need in order to grow. Plus, this stuff pretty much does not require any more addition to it, other than perhaps some peat moss to give it some loft. But you can use this straight like it is, and it's got the essential nutrients just necessary to jumpstart your plants. And I'm going to use this for vegetable seeds. So it's right now it's temperature still pretty cold, and what I did is, as you can see, this meat thermometer is, I'd say that's about 7 or 8 inches long. It's pretty long, so I don't want the tip to touch the bottom of the pot and then I get a false reading. So what I did was I mounted it up in the center, more towards the back, because as you can see, my wood stove does not allow me to set it on there 100%. So what I do is I mount it up like this. Don't compact it, because you want the steam to come up through from the bottom, and that's the concept. But you just slide that in there sideways and let it rest. And then what I have is a metal garbage can lid. Set that right on there. And the fire is going merrily here. You can probably hear it snapping and crackling. And that's a low. Well, it doesn't look low now because I opened the doors, but it's got a low, mellow fire in there, gently warming the stove. And as a result, I should have some composted or sterilized, not sterilized, but it's a pasteurization process. It wipes out all the nasties, and it leaves you with some stuff that will not have fungi in it, like damping off, and it kills the weed seeds, as I said before. So that's